If somebody says they hate Nintendo, then either they're lying, or they're in the middle of an award-winning stand-up comedy act, because the above-average-sized den has some of the most revered franchises of all time, such as Mario, The Legend of Zelda, Digimon, and of course, Seinfeld. But as great as all these franchises are, I can't help but wonder how much potential is being wasted by letting some of the lesser-known Nintendo IPs sit on the bench. My name's Cameron, and here's 11 neglected Nintendo franchises the Switch needs to give us in order to stop me from whooping the Rudy Poo candy asses. Before we begin, let me be clear that for the most part, I don't think Nintendo is wrong for focusing on their bigger franchises, seeing as how more often than not, those are the ones that make the most people happy. Plus, N-Dog's a business, so obviously they're trying to make as much money as they can. But I think one reason why some of their bigger franchises are as popular as they are is because of how hard Nintendo pushes them. And I also think it's possible that some of the lesser-known franchises could be way more of an asset to the N-Boys if they were presented as a bigger deal. But there are other franchises that I personally just want to see brought back. So in no particular order, let's waste one more second and start with number 1, FZero. I mean, no poop, right? You'd think this one's obvious, but for some reason, Shigeru Miyamoto has no idea why fans would want this. He even asked people what they could possibly want from the next game that hasn't already been done. Which is interesting that he said that, seeing as how Nintendo's cranking Mario Kart games out faster than your ass. And with the exception of a few new tracks and characters, every new Mario Kart game's only really an ass hair different from the last one. Don't get me wrong though, I love getting updated versions of the same Mario Kart game every few years or so, but I think a franchise like FZero deserves the same treatment. Especially since Nintendo's kinda sorta figured the online gaming thing out since the last FZero game was released on the Game Boy Advance. Other than that, there was a minigame in Nintendo Land that Miyamoto suggested playing in the meantime to hold us over, so hopefully that means they're at least working on a new game. And if you ask my fat ass, I'd wager they probably are. But speaking of Nintendo Land, number 2. Nintendo Land. I know this game was kinda like a Wii U tech demo, and everybody just loves degrading the Wii U every chance they get, but if you've ever actually played this game, then you'd realize how much fun it really is. Or at the very least, realize how much potential there is to make it better. I only played this game for like an hour because for some reason it didn't have online support, and for very good reasons I don't have any friends. But I've played long enough to know there's a lot of fun to be had if a few tweaks were made here and there. Sure, they couldn't port this exact version over to the Switch since the game was built around the Wii U gamepad and Wii remotes, but a lot of the mini-games would work on the Switch no problem. And with the Joy-Con technology, there's a lot of potential for some cool new mini-games. I like the idea of having an assload of different Nintendo franchises represented in one game, and I know Smash Bros does that, but that's only in the fighting genre, whereas Nintendo Land has more variety, with every minigame more or less feeling like the franchise it represents. With Amiibo support in an online mode, Nintendo Land on the Switch could be a home run that only really need a little bit of effort put into it. Number 3. Punch-Out! When it comes to neglected Nintendo IPs, this really is one of the more underrated franchises. On consoles, there's only 3 main games in the series, but every single one of them's amazing, and there's so much more untapped potential. The gameplay's somewhat simplistic, but a new Punch-Out wouldn't have to be a AAA $60 release. But if Nintendo really wanted to go the extra mile, then adding a 2-player mode with online support would be badass. Or, you know, we could just get another by-the-numbers Punch-Out game, and I'd still be a happy little boy either way. Number 4. Doki Doki Panic. Everybody knows by now that the Mario 2 that was released outside of Japan was originally a licensed game called Doki Doki Panic that was based off the Yume Kojo 87 event, or something, which Nintendo doesn't own the rights to. But after the vastly different American Mario 2, the series went back to the traditional gameplay and never looked back. But the gameplay involving throwing enemies all over the place is a lot of fun, so why not dust the old game engine off and create an entirely new franchise with new characters? I mean, I guess I'd be happy with Mario and the gang returning, and the game might even sell better that way, but people usually complain online all over the place whenever an established franchise does something out of the norm, so why not just make new franchises altogether when trying new things? Besides, Nintendo can't create popular new characters without trying, and Mario being in more games doesn't really make him a bigger star than he already is, so why not try to create a new gang of characters altogether with the Doki Doki Panic concept? The closest thing the North American Mario 2 ever got to a sequel was the remake on the Game Boy Advance, which had plenty of updates and could have just as easily been called a sequel with the amount of effort they put into it. But in 2018, 2D platformers aren't that hard to make, and on top of that, they're back in style. So I think if Nintendo just had a small team put a lot of effort into Mario 2 or whatever you want to call it, then the results it'd yield would be great. I mean, it'd make me happy at least. And in the end, isn't that all Nintendo's ever set out to do? Was to make Cameron's Vaniacs happy?
That's right, make me happy, motherfucker. That's your job, to make me happy. That's what I'm talking about.
Number 5. Pokemon Conquest. For all the spin-off Pokemon games out there, why does Pokemon Conquest have to be the one that underperformed? I mean, it still sold 1 million copies, but for the Pokemon franchise, that's like a financial disaster. However, it wasn't the game's fault that it didn't sell better. I blame this DS game underperforming on the fact that it came out after the 3DS was already on the market, and it probably would have helped if Nintendo at least told one person that this game was even available. When I asked a Nintendo representative about it right after the game came out, he told me to fuck off and go buy a 3DS. Pokemon Conquest is basically Final Fantasy Tactics combined with Pokemon, with the end result being just as awesome as it sounds. And as long as people actually know about it, then a new game in the Pokemon Conquest franchise would be a big hit on the Switch. So make it happen, Nintendo, or else I'm gonna come out to Nintendo HQ, but not want to walk on your actual property because the security guard's gonna be looking at me disappointingly. And I know you don't want that to happen again, Nintendo. Number 6. Ice Climber. The original Ice Climber was okay. Fun for the time, but it doesn't really hold up well in 2018. So why do I want a new game? Well, I don't really know. I just kinda do. It's not that I can't think of any other franchises that need a revival, because I had to leave some good ones out of this video, but something about the gameplay just seems like it'd have a lot of potential for an update 30 years later. I don't know what you could do, but Nintendo's clever, so I'm sure they'd figure it out. All I know is that the Ice Climbers are cool and deserve names as well as a complete reboot. Much like Punch-Out, it doesn't need to be a AAA release with like 8 years of development or anything like that either, because one of the best things about modern gaming is that along with the larger scale games, there's also room for smaller ones that are meant to be played through more quickly. And I'm the kind of person who likes short but sweet games, and I know there's many others who do as well. So think about giving us a new Ice Climber, Nintendo. Because if you do, I'll tell my dad you've been good, and he'll let you come to our hot dog party next weekend. But you need to announce the new Ice Climber by then, so, you know, hurry up. Number 7. Kid Icarus. It's not like this franchise has been dormant for that long, but with Nintendo kidnapping Sakurai to make a new Smash game every 5 minutes, we're lucky to have even gotten Kid Icarus Uprising, and the end result was pretty good. But it's a fact of life that video game sequels are always better than the originals without any exceptions anywhere you look, no matter what. Sakurai might not want to do a sequel, but even if they reboot the franchise all over again without Sakurai's involvement, I still think there's plenty of potential for an angel who may or may not be able to fly that shoots things. Plus I appreciate the humor Pit brings to the table. Number 8. Sin and Punishment. One thing I love about the sometimes underrated Wii was that it brought on-rail shooters back to consoles. And with the Joy-Cons, there's plenty of room for that genre of games on the Switch as well. The first Sin and Punishment was the Japanese exclusive on the 64, and it had an overlooked sequel on the Wii that came out for the rest of the world as well. Even though the Switch has plenty of variety as it is, there's still plenty of room to bring this franchise and genre back as well. So give us Sin and Punishment, or just make another on-rail shooter altogether. Either way, I don't give a shit. Just let me shoot some bad guys in the asshole with my Joy-Cons, Nintendo. Number 9. A spiritual successor to Mother. I've made peace with the fact that we're never gonna get another Mother game since Shikasatsu Itoi's kinda over it. I mean, a Mother game without that man's involvement would be like a Metal Gear game without Hideo Kojima, and we all know how that turned out. So why do I want a spiritual successor? Well, because even without Itoi's humor involved, the gameplay's a lot of fun, and I think they could use the engine and battle style to create something completely new and original. I don't know exactly how involved Mr. Itoi was, but to the best of my knowledge, he was a comedian and not a game designer, and the Mother series is great for more reasons than just the humor and stories. Besides, Nintendo needs more RPGs on the Switch since you can never get enough of those. And speaking of RPGs, number 10, Golden Sun. This series kind of appeared out of nowhere and everybody loved it, but then it just kind of disappeared. And I don't know how you all feel, but I want the series to make a triumphant return. The Golden Sun games may not be as lucrative as the Mario sports games, which is what the developer Camelot Software spent most of their time working on the past few years. But surely it couldn't hurt to let those developers get a little nuts from time to time, could it, Nintendo? Or maybe it could hurt, actually. So never mind. Fuck Golden Sun. Keep making sports games, guys. It's not only for our safety, but yours as well. But anyway, now for the 11th neglected Nintendo franchise that needs to join the Switch party. Pilot Wings and Steel Diver.
We're not invited is the end of that sentence.
Damn straight!
The real number 11 is Eternal Darkness. This M-rated psychological horror was created by Silicon Knights, who's about as alive as this pencil. But regardless, Nintendo still owns the rights to it and even renewed them in 2015, meaning that a sequel is at least in the realm of possibility. Much like some of the other games in this video, this franchise would be great to reboot for the sake of Nintendo having more variety on the Switch. Not only variety in gameplay, but with content as well. N-Dog's known for being a little family-friendly, which isn't a bad thing, seeing as how companies like Pixar are pretty great. But I bet if Pixar were to, for some reason, make an R-rated movie, it'd probably be amazing since they could take the simplest ideas and make them into amazing movies. And I think Nintendo's more than capable of doing the same thing with games. It'd be cool if N-Dog gave an M-rated game a try for themselves. Seeing as how N-Dog didn't make Eternal Darkness for the GameCube, it'd probably have to be a reboot rather than a sequel. But with the quality control the above-average-sized N's known for, I bet they'd silence a lot of critics who think Nintendo's not capable of making a good game that isn't geared towards small children and babies who can barely support the weight of their own heads. But let's come back from Fantasyland though, cause I know this almost certainly would never happen. So delete the comments where he called me a ninny for entertaining the idea, cause I do know better. I just like to dream big is all. But whether or not Nintendo actually makes it themselves, they really ought to get somebody else to. Cause the new Eternal Darkness game on the Switch would really go a long way in strengthening its game library. Cause while there are M-rated games on the Switch, none of them are exclusives. But I'm sure a lot of people would buy Eternal Darkness, and proving that an exclusive M-rated game could sell on the Switch would make it much more likely to get other exclusives on the platform as well. And plus, it'd just be a lot of fun to play another Eternal Darkness game. So fuck it. But what neglected Nintendo franchises do you want to see the Switch resurrect? For the record, I don't consider Luigi's Mansion to be neglected, but I know there's some good ones I miss, so feel free to berate me in the comments below for my negligence, and as always, I'll pin whatever I find most entertaining. Consider supporting this channel on Patreon for as low as $1 a month. Don't forget to like and share this video to help this channel grow. And if you're an above or below average sized man or woman, then go ahead and press the subscribe button. And if you're an average sized human, press it anyway. My name's Cameron, and I'll see you next time on Dragon Ball AF.
So I want to say thank you to your loyalty, thank you for your support.